Introduction. In the winter of 1971, as the Indian subcontinent braced itself for one of the most defining conflicts of the modern history, a small Himalayan town became the site of a fierce military confrontation that would determine the fate of a region and influence the course of the entire war. The town was Poonch, located just kilometers away from Pakistan's border, surrounded by mountains that both protected and threatened it. To Pakistan, Poonch was a prize worth risking everything, a tactical gateway into Jammu and Kashmir, and a symbolic victory that could destabilize India's defensive greed. To India, Poonch was a fortress that must not fall, no matter the cost. The battle that unfolded here in December 1971, overshadowed by larger theatres like Shakhagar, Basantar, and Lonjewala, remains one of the most remarkable examples of mountain warfare: defensive depth, infantry grit, artillery coordination, and operational resilience. It demonstrates, above all, how terrain discipline, leadership, and morale can turn a small garrison town into an unbreakable wall. And today I will be exploring the Battle of Poonch in an unparalleled depth, covering its history, strategic significance, military planning, Pakistani offensive strategy, India's defensive apparatus, the combat phase, counter-offensives, the eventual Indian victory, and the battle's lasting legacy. Let's start with Chapter 1: The Geographical and Historical Backdrop. Poonch, a region forged in conflict. Poonch has always been more than a dot on the map. Historically ruled by Dogra kings, strategically bordering Pakistan-occupied Kashmir (POK), and geographically wedged into ridges, valleys, and rivers, it was a natural choke point, easy to defend yet dangerously exposed. In 1947–48, during the First Indo-Pak conflict, Poonch was besieged for over a year. India broke the siege only after opening the famous Poonch-Rajouri link, establishing its control over the region. This history mattered because the ghosts of 1948 haunted Pakistani military planners in 1971. They believed the town remained vulnerable. Why Poonch mattered in 1971? Poonch held a multi-dimensional significance, strategic importance. Its capture could sever Indian supply lines between Jammu and Kashmir. It could isolate Indian forces north of Pimpal range. It was a critical point in the defensive lattice India maintained across J&K. Operational utility: Poonch's surrounding heights provided observation over Indian movements. Losing it would expose Rajouri as well as it would dangerously expose Naushera. Let's talk about the psychological impact. A Pakistani victory here would have enormous propaganda value. It would weaken India's defensive morale in Kashmir. Pakistan believed that capturing Poonch would cripple India's position in the northern theatre, and it would have. But they underestimated the Indian Army's preparation and the sheer will of the defenders of the Indian Armed Forces. Chapter 2: The Forces and Commanders on Both Sides. In the Indian side, it was the 93 Infantry Brigade. Poonch was defended primarily by the 93rd Infantry Brigade, led by Brigadier P. N. Dhar, a firm, composed officer with an exceptional understanding on mountain warfare. Under him served the 11th Gorkha Rifles, the 4th Kumaon Regiment, the 6th Sikh Light Infantry Regiment, units of artillery including 25-pounders, 105 guns, mortar shells, engineers and logistic detachments, the local home guard and militia assistance. Indian soldiers had the advantage of familiarity with terrain, interconnected defensive posts, good morale, and a clear tactical objectives. The Pakistani forces. Let's talk about the offensive elements. Pakistan launched its offensive with the 26th Frontier Force Regiment, supporting battalions of the Mujahideen irregulars, artillery brigades positioned across the line, light armor and infantry and mobile infantry elements through terrain restricted or because the terrain restricted tank use. Their plan was ambitious, just like every Pakistani plan is. Break India's outer ring, cut the Poonch Mandi axis, seize key ridges, and encircle the town. But high ambition without high adaptability often leads to harsh outcomes. Chapter 3: The Build Up to Battle. Let's talk about the political trigger. By November 1971, India and Pakistan were on an irreversible path to war. The genocide in East Pakistan, the refugee crisis in India, and Pakistan hostile posturing in the West all pointed to a full-scale conflict. Pakistan launched preemptive airstrikes on Indian air bases on 3rd of December 1971, formally starting the Indo-Pak War of the 1971, and is also called the Liberation War of 1971. Simultaneously, Pakistan activated its ground offensives along the border, including the assault towards Poonch. Indian anticipation and defensive preparation. Brigadier P.N. Dhar had learned from the siege of 1948. He ensured multi-depth defenses, interlocking fields of fire, pre-registered artillery coordinates, redundant supply routes, and a defensive box system around Poonch. Indian positions covered the three ridge lines: Khari Dhar Ridge, Mandi Ridge, and Danna Ridge. Some people also call it Dhanna Ridge. Pakistan's attack would have to pass through these natural choke points directly into Indian machine gun and artillery arcs. Chapter 4: Pakistan's Offensive Plan. Operational Ease. Pakistan's attack, codename Operation Easy, unfolded in three phases: capture forward posts, neutralize Indian artillery and communication, encircle Poonch from southwest and north. They expected that overwhelming infantry pressure would cause Indian forces to crumble. But war is not won on expectation, it's won on execution, planning, and grit. Chapter 5: The battle begins. The first waves. Infantry assault on the heights. On the night of 3rd December, Pakistani artillery opened intense fire on Indian forward posts. Under cover of darkness and smoke, Pakistani infantry advanced up the icy and rocky slopes towards Mandi and it's Khari Dhar. But as soon as they entered the kill zone, Indian positions erupted. Machine guns from the 11 Gorkha Rifles cut down the initial waves. Indian LMG nests, like the one would be depicted in the thumbnail, were positioned to deliver enfilading fire, brutal and unavoidable. Artillery from the valley thundered into predetermined grids, turning the approach routes into killing fields. By dawn, Pakistan had achieved none of its initial objectives. Close combat on the slopes. The most intense fighting occurred on the 5th, pardon, it happened on the 6th of December, I think, when Pakistani forces made desperate attempts to storm the Indian posts. The Indian soldiers fought in fog, in freezing wind, at close quarters with grenades, bayonets, and rifles. The Gorkhas conducted at least two counter-charges with bayonets and kukris, pushing at attackers off the ridges. Terrain became the defensive as well as the decisive factor. Every inch of slope became a defensive advantage for the Indian armed forces. Pakistani armor halted. Pakistani attempt to bring in light armor to support the infantry advance may sound a good tactical decision, but the narrow mountain tracks, pre-sighted Indian artillery, and minefields turned their armor push into a disaster. Several vehicles were destroyed or immobilized, leaving infantry without armor support. The offensive began to collapse. Chapter 6: The Indian Counterattack. Aggressive defense becomes counteroffensive. India didn't remain passive. After halting Pakistani attack waves, the Indian forces recaptured forward outposts, strengthened perimeter defenses, as well as simultaneously launched local counterattacks to push the enemy farther from the ridge lines. This prevented Pakistan from regrouping and re-attempting coordinated thrusts. Let's talk about the supply lines and logistics that the Indian armed forces strengthened meanwhile. One of India's greatest achievements in the battle was maintaining the Poonch and Rajouri road link. Despite constant shelling, engineers kept the route open, allowing ammunition, reinforcements, ration, evacuation of the wounded soldiers. This logistical resilience broke Pakistan's hope of starving out Poonch, the breaking point for Pakistan. By 9th of December, Pakistan had expended massive resource with minimal gains. Casualties were high, morale was sinking. Pakistani commanders realized the terrain favored India. Indian artillery dominance was absolute. Their attack plan underestimated Indian preparedness. The element of surprise had been lost. The offensive was effectively abandoned. Pakistan shifted to a defensive posture, hoping to prevent India from retaliating in other sectors. Let's talk about the aftermath and the significance of this victory by the Indian Armed Forces. Strategic consequences. India successfully India's successful defense of Poonch was ensured. The Western Front in J&K remained stable. Pakistani forces were tied down, unable to redeploy. India could focus more resources on the Eastern Front, especially or particularly on Bangladesh's liberation. Poonch became a symbol of Indian tactical superiority. Now let's talk about the psychological impact because it had quite a lot of impact when it comes to psychology. For Pakistan, Poonch's failure was a severe blow to their national pride. For India, it was affirmation the mountains will never fall as long as the Indian soldiers defended it. Chapter 9. Let's talk about the military lessons from Poonch. The battle provides timeless lessons. Terrain mastery beats numerical advantage. Artillery coordination wins mountain warfare. Defensive depth and redundancy prevent encirclement. Morale and discipline outmatch surprise and aggression. And logistics is the backbone of victory. These lessons remain part of the Indian military doctrine to this day. Legacy of the battle. Let's honor the soldiers. Though lesser known than other battles, the men who defended Poonch displayed unbreakable courage, iron discipline, mastery when it comes to mountain combat. Their actions ensured that Poonch remained the unbroken shield of Jammu and Kashmir. Why Poonch still matters today. Even today, the Poonch sector remains sensitive. The legacy of 1971 is a reminder terrain can be conquered by artillery, artillery can be conquered by courage, and courage can make a small town undefeatable. Conclusion. The Battle of Poonch of 1971 was not merely a defensive success, it was a demonstration of India's ability to hold critical ground under extreme pressure. It proved that even a modest-sized brigade with determination and terrain mastery can halt and defeat a larger and ambitious offensive. Poonch stood firm because his defender refused to break. Their victory ensured the stability of the Western Front, protected Jammu and Kashmir's integrity, and contributed to India's overall success in the 1971 war, a war that reshaped South Asia forever. The mountains of Poonch still carry the echoes of December 1971, reminding us and everyone of a time when courage and strategy combined to create an unshakable wall. Poonch held, India triumphed, and the history remembers.